All right, welcome to NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. This episode is on the Indianapolis Colts. I am joined by Nate from the UnAmerican Football Show. He is across the pond, as they say, in the London area. How's it going this morning or this afternoon for you?
It's good, yeah. No, it's been a long day already. My kid's been up since like 6, and she's not feeling very well. So it's been one of those days. But no, I'm good. I'm 6 days without football. I'm feeling the withdrawal. Can't wait for football this evening.
Absolutely. Well, I have kids, so I definitely feel your pain on that one. But yeah, it's been interesting. Toward the end of the year here, and not having a Thursday night game, it's been a little rough.
It sucks, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Like football over here, like you used to, we more or less get games all week because the teams are in so many different competitions. There's a Premier League, for instance. Then they're in the FA Cup. There's a League Cup. Then if they're in the European competitions, there's 2 or 3 European competitions. So like NFL teams, if you go all the way, you play 21, 22 games, whereas in the UK you play, like in football over here, you play sometimes 60, 70 games a season.
Wow.
So it's just constant for 8 months of the year. So it's really weird, like with the NFL just stops. It's like there's days without football here. What the hell's going on?
Right. Well, let's get into that. So obviously, American football is not the biggest thing over there. So how did you become a Colts fan living in the UK?
So a buddy of mine is a Cowboys fan for whatever reason. So he was sort of following for a good few years before I sort of started taking up an interest. And really it was kind of, we'd play Madden every now and then. I didn't have a team. I'd pick whoever was rated pretty high, which, at the time was always the Pats, which, looking back, I feel filthy, but whatever. But then I guess the first Super Bowl I watched was the Bears Colts Super Bowl, and about 30 seconds before halftime, I'd heard of the Bears, so I just decided, every Brit loves an underdog, so I was like, okay, it's got to be the Colts then. And then obviously the Bears scored a kickoff return touchdown, and I was like, oh shit.
My guy Devin Hester, yep, I'm a Bears fan, so yeah.
So I was like, yeah, okay, well, obviously I picked the wrong team, but at that point, we don't like switching allegiances over here in the UK. Once you're a fan of a team, you're a fan for life, and that's all it is. So I stuck it out, and obviously things went well from that point on. And I probably didn't watch much other than the Super Bowl for 5 or 6 years, to the point where until I started properly following football again and looking back at the Colts, I didn't even know they'd been in another Super Bowl. That's how little I was really following. But then about 2012, 2013, so right around, when Andrew Luck was drafted, I just happened to start thinking, no, I'm going to get into this more. I'm going to play Madden more. I'm going to start learning the game because I do enjoy it. And just went from there. And from about 2014, 15, I started getting Game Pass. And, I've just been obsessed ever since, really.
Well, at least you didn't become a Jaguars fan right away, because
oh god, no. I mean, I didn't really pay much attention to the Jags. A lot of fans over here are Jags fans because of the London series, and probably only because of the London series,
right,
or the international series. But I couldn't do that.
Have you been to one of those games then?
Or? Yeah. Unfortunately, I went to the Colts game where we lost to Jacksonville in London at Wembley Stadium, which sucked. It was a really dreadful performance by the Colts. I think Pat McAfee was probably the only player that could walk out of the stadium with his head held high. He was the only one that had any decent performance. But I also went to. I've been to a couple more. I'm lucky that my work has some corporate boxes there, so I get the treatment because no one else wants to go. It's great.
That's awesome. Well, let's kind of get into this season. It's been ups and downs. Talk about first about how the season started and maybe some of the keys to the turnaround this year.
So I think everyone other than Titans fans, were probably surprised by how poor the Colts started out. Obviously, we had a pretty decent season last year. We took the Bills pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
They won by like 3 points, I think, in the wild card round, which was tough to watch, but it happens. We didn't expect any success there, really, so it's fine. But this season, I thought we're going to carry that momentum on. We've only got stronger. I liked what we did in the draft. I did a preseason draft, and I picked Quinton Nelson, so I was pretty happy when they went and got him. And it just preseason was tough with COVID and injuries and what have you, and Carson Wentz is an enigma that nobody knows how to crack. So it was a tough start. I mean, I think the biggest thing to consider is the opening stretch was like almost historically rough, like when you think about strength of schedule. Mm-hmm. So they started with the Seahawks, who have sucked this year, but were coming into the season with yet another winning season, right? Seahawks, Rams, Titans, Dolphins, and Ravens, with Titans, Dolphins, Ravens all away from home. So through 5 games, 1-4. Only beating Miami, and we were lucky. We were pretty lucky that Tua was out, and they had to rely on Jacoby Brissett, which was comical for me. It was a tough start with Quinton Nelson, that depleted O-line, because obviously Eric Fisher was injured and only sort of coming back into some kind of fitness, and with that Achilles injury, we didn't know what was going to happen with him. I think there's a reluctance to lean on Jonathan Taylor from the coaching staff as well, much like there was last season as well. Sort of ease him into the season rather than just go, okay, ball hawk, bell cow, here, have the ball. I think getting the guys, getting that O-line back and firing, leaning on Taylor more, and then having a kind of easier stretch through the middle with the Texans, Jets, Jags, and 49ers really helped turn things around.
Yeah, I had done right now I do an NFC North pod. We talked about that. I had done like a preview show with the pod mate of mine, and I remember that 49ers Colts game and thinking, oh, this could turn the season around for either team, and then it was just a rainy mess, like a monsoon. And I mean, and then it was just a crazy kicking issues, and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big difference between the two teams in that game was that Carson Wentz could throw the ball in those conditions and Jimmy G couldn't.
Yeah.
Carson found Pittman on several really deep balls to really move the chains. And obviously, the 49ers are always credited with having a fairly decent run game, but it was relatively non-existent. And Jonathan Taylor was like, no, boys, this is how you do it.
Well, yeah, and speaking of that, let's go ahead and just do. I have an overreaction here, and maybe it's not. I mean, hear it in media as well. So, Jonathan Taylor for MVP.
Right. It's got to be him or Cup.
Yeah.
There are no. I know it's traditionally, or maybe not traditionally, but recently it's been a quarterback award, which annoys me no end.
Right.
It's shocking that Derrick Henry should have been MVP last season.
Oh,
I get Aaron Rodgers was the best quarterback by a mile last year and was putting up some pretty crazy numbers. But if the wording of the award is most valuable player, if it wasn't for Henry last year, the Titans would not have won the AFC South. Probably maybe not have made the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the state they've been in. I mean, I know they've been missing more than just Henry. Julio's last year's Julio rather than 5 years ago Julio. You've got AJ Brown that's missed a lot of time, and they didn't sign re-sign a couple of guys like Johnny Smith in the summer, which would have helped, which would have helped on offense. But it's the most valuable player. Derrick Henry absolutely was this year. So I understand why Titan fans are like, oh, Derrick didn't win it last year. It wasn't even in the conversation. So Jonathan isn't this year. That's not how it works. It's not how it works. If a dude's doing the bits to earn the recognition and the conversation, doesn't matter if someone did last year and didn't get it. I think he's I probably would actually lean to Cup more so because I think we expected Jonathan Taylor to continue the trajectory that he's on, whereas Cup's somewhat of a surprise. I mean, to me, he's a surprise. I really didn't rate that, even with Stafford going to the Rams. I didn't really rate him or Bobby Trees, but they both had a really good season until Trees' injury.
Yeah, I was all on the Bobby Trees bandwagon. I thought he was gonna, kind of be the breakout, but I mean, Cup is amazing. I really love that pick there. And
yeah, he's awesome.
When you talk about Jonathan Taylor, is he the best Colts running back that you've seen?
Oh yeah, but there's no. I mean, Marlon Mack had like a good couple of years.
Yep.
But it was only like his last year before the injury where he really turned it on. He was solid and dependable, but he wasn't a star. And before that, we had the likes of Ahmad Bradshaw and Trent Richardson. So, do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's been no one back there to really. Frank Gore was again solid, but towards the end of his career and not a breakout. So Jonathan Taylor's the first star that I've seen at running back for the Colts.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to Edgerrin James, but I don't know if that was kind of before your fandom.
It was a little bit before, unfortunately.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Jonathan Taylor, I have to admit, in fantasy, I was not quite sold because I wasn't sure if he was going to be the bell cow back. I mean, you have, they signed Mack, and you got Hines. I wasn't quite sure he was going to be the bell cow back, and he's just. I actually I live here in Wisconsin. And so I've heard a lot about him and know a lot about him, because he's a Wisconsin Badger, and I knew what he did at Wisconsin. And, now that the Colts are using him that way or just kind of unleashing him, I really think he should be absolutely in that MVP discussion.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think the biggest difference for me between that Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry is Henry's just an animal, right? Like, he doesn't like. Jonathan Taylor is physically impressive. He's insanely quick, but he's also unbelievably clever. He's an unbelievably smart dude, and I think that for me is like the edge that he holds over Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry does. I'm not calling Derrick Henry thick or anything. I don't like that.
Right.
I've heard him talk 3 times. I couldn't tell you, but I think watching them, he doesn't need to employ any of that kind of. That's the whole. Let me pause here and find it. He's just, I'll just smash him out of the way anyway. Who cares? just trucks through whoever's in his way.
Yeah, in that long term, it'll be interesting to see how that, obviously with the injury this year, so Jonathan Taylor, he definitely can hit those holes. And
oh boy, we've got to protect him.
Well, yeah, and so talking about protecting, let's just kind of go the offensive line. I mean, what makes Quinton Nelson so good, and then the rest of the offensive line so good with the Colts?
Ballard really did a number drafting Nelson and at 6, I think it was, and then getting Braden Smith, who has had insane stats year on year. I mean, he's had a bit of a regression this year, but the whole line has a little bit. And then obviously like Glowinski, Ryan Kelly, and then up until last year Costanzo, and then this year Fisher, who's not. He's replaceable, Fisher. He's not done anything special. But the depth on that O-line is insane. Like, drafted Danny Pinter in the 6th round, and he's playing like a top 10 lineman. We've got Chris Reed, who's filling in well. Really, the only guy that's not a star, other than Fisher first year off of an Achilles injury, which is unsurprising, is probably Julian Davenport, who, I hope we let go because he's dreadful. But I think with Nelson, it's so rare for linemen to come out of college being like both a great athlete and both technician, whereas Nelson is absolutely both. And he has like this proper aggressive streak. He just takes no shit and dishes it out in pancakes. His technical ability actually probably matches his physical ability, which the only other guy I can think in the league that comes close to being as good technically as he is athletically, maybe Zach Martin.
Yeah.
And Nelson can literally pancake anybody not named Aaron Donald. his hand placement and the way he dominates just by being at the right spot and the right time and by being smarter than everybody else. Really, I think that's what makes him so good and makes him probably the best interior lineman, if not the best lineman in the league. I think he's also got a rare instinct for just the position. Like how many guys can make the block and pancake a guy at left guard, and then make the swivel, read the blitz off the right side of the line, and still make it over there and block.
Mm-hmm.
Like he does that. There's so many highlights where he's literally putting in a block, pancaking someone, and then making a block on the other side of the line. He's a phenomenon.
Yeah, and it's not in the draft. It's not a sexy pick to do the line. You know, I mean,
oh no, I mean it got ruined. People like, what is Ballard doing picking him at 6? Unreal. But look at it.
Well, yeah, and you know, all of the teams. I mean, especially looking at what they wanted their identity to be a running team.
Yeah,
I mean, or even if you're passing, you need a solid line to go forward. I mean, that's the Bears have had issues with that for a while, and now I think they've got some rookies that hopefully can develop, and that's that's what you need. I mean, you look at even the Bengals, trying to keep Joe Burrow healthy. I mean,
yeah,
you need a solid line, and when you have them, just obviously then that only makes the whole offense better.
Yeah, I mean it's a lesson the Colts had to learn the hard way through Grigson not protecting Andrew Luck. I mean,
right?
Who retired 10 years too early. I was
gonna say, yeah. What was kind of going through your mind, when Andrew Luck retired?
Just disappointment. Pure disappointment and rage, but not towards Luck. There were some people in the crowd booing Luck, which I just didn't understand. Like the guy, he's a new father. He's not enjoying the game anymore because he's always injured. Just let him go. We didn't as an organization, we just didn't protect him, and we've paid the price for it. But genuinely, I mean, I know I've only been watching the game 10 years, right? Properly 8 years, but for 10 years. But having seen games of Peyton Manning, seen Tom Brady over the past, going back and watching people like Marino and whoever else, Andrew Luck is the most naturally talented quarterback I've ever seen. It was just such a damn shame that we had an idiot like Grigson who just couldn't draft.
I mean, I wonder if, was he booed almost because of the timing of everything, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's really shitty. I mean, admittedly, it's a shitty time to drop it. If he'd been thinking about that,
yeah,
I can't understand it. But I'm not part of any of the conversations, right? So I'm probably never going to understand it. It's not a great time to drop that bomb, but. Yeah, the booing's just idiots, man. Just pure idiots.
Well, that's here's the thing. Like, I think as fans, people get excited either way, and I think as a you just need to realize that they are people as well. We're all disappointed when our teams don't do well. There's obviously a professional part of it, but then there's also when you talk about football, I mean, just the toll it takes, and for me, I'm in my 40s, so I go all the way back to Barry Sanders. When he retired, it was like, really, but the Lions didn't put a team around him. I mean, he was constantly just making absolutely amazing plays out of absolutely nothing, and when you have these players that put everything on the line, you can tell that he wasn't, Andrew Luck wasn't taking plays off,
No. I mean, he took in his rookie season, he took a team that earned the first overall pick to the playoffs in his rookie season. That roster wasn't drastically different. I know there was a bunch of rookies there, but it wasn't drastically different. He took a bad roster to the playoffs.
Yeah,
that's the guy he was. He was just an unbelievably gifted football player, and it is criminal absolutely criminal for Grigson, who, if I saw him in the street, I genuinely would push. I don't think I'd hit him or something. I'd probably push him over.
Well, speaking of a quarterback that has been pushed a lot in Philadelphia, is Carson Wentz going to work out in Indianapolis? I mean, he's I don't know. It's been up and down. I mean, how's this year been?
I'm usually very opinionated and very open with my opinions, but I'm almost reluctant to answer this question because the truth is I don't know.
Yeah.
But I lean more towards no, that he's not the guy at the moment. He's playing at a level which is above anywhere when anybody would have thought he's playing, right? He's probably top 13, 14 in the league, maybe higher, maybe top 10 in terms of his touchdown to interception ratio is right up there. But I'm not sure about his quarterback rating and everything. I try not to look too much at that. I just try and watch the game and feel my opinions rather than read them, but he's probably playing at a level which you could win a Super Bowl with.
See, that's the question. So, as a Bears fan, I mean, the quarterback who we went to the Super Bowl with last, I don't even want to speak his name. So you look at it and, obviously you've got the top tier quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, have to speak his name, Tom Brady, even some of the younger ones, Joe Burrow, and some of these younger ones that are franchise, changers, when you look at the Colts and just overall, do they really need him to be a top 10 or even a top 5 quarterback to get to and win the Super Bowl?
No, I mean, look at Jared Goff. He got carried by that roster to the Super Bowl. He didn't take them there, did he? Whereas, like Tom Brady was often the driving force for the Pats to make it all the way. Jared Goff got carried. No doubt about that in my mind. Carson Wentz absolutely could probably not be the driving force, but be more of a part of that winning streak that would get you there than Jared Goff ever was in the Rams. Do I think he'll help Indy win the whole thing? Probably not. I think the hero ball that he's prone to, the shovel passes when he panics, all of which we've seen less of probably in the last month, but way too much of this season. They really worry me. Sometimes you're just watching him and just check down. Nyheim Hines, who's probably top 2 or 3 receiving backs in the league, is open. Jonathan Taylor is open. Jack Doyle is open, right? Just stop it. But I worry about his reading. Like he goes through the progressions and he's seen these guys are open and he's going for a triple coverage downfield to Michael Pittman, who, is pretty good at catching contested balls, as it turns out. But stop trying to go for 25 yards when you've got 7 or 8 and it's second down. Just stop it. It's so frustrating. It's so unbelievably frustrating. It's genuinely painful to watch at times.
Well, yeah, I mean, you want a quarterback who's going to be smart and kind of make the right decisions. And, with that, offense, I mean, you have a Jonathan Taylor, you have a Hines. I mean, you have a solid, backfield there. But you also have some solid wide receivers. I mean, when you look at this Colts wide receiver core, like who is going to be that number one guy?
I mean, the only one you can really mention as being the number one guy is Michael Pittman.
Yep.
He's a very solid, but I mean, he's not a WR1 like in half the teams in the league. He's WR2, which is a problem. Whether he can progress himself on and be that guy, I'd like to say yes. I think he's got the sort of the raw ability, but it's finding that he's come in clutch a number of times this season. So I might be being a little bit harsh. I think there's no one else there to challenge him. Ty is at the tail end of his career. He's not going to get you. He's not going to starch the Texans twice a year for you anymore. I think he may be, it's fair to say, he's sold NRG. I think. And the rest of the guys, there's there's way too many guys that still need to prove it. Zach Pascal's mostly anonymous. I can't think of a single. I don't think he scored a touchdown this season. He may have got one. Paris Campbell spends more time on IR than he does. The other guys just don't see enough of the ball. We've got Ashton Doolin, who is a great special teams guy, really talented special teams guy, and we see him every 4 or 5 times a game. And I'd love to see more of him because the guy might be the fastest person in the league. He's
Ashton Doolin.
He's lightning, but we just don't see him. And then there's Desmond Patman, who there's loads of tape in the off season with him and Wentz getting really striking up a real partnership and deep ball after deep ball after deep ball. And we saw it on Christmas Day or Boxing Day for me, probably about 3:30 in the morning, where Wentz found him in the end zone. It was a great catch, great run, great everything, great pass, perfect. But it's the first time he's seen the ball all season. And I know he was injured as well. But there's Michael Strahan, who 7th round rookie, redshirt year. Okay, we'll give him a bye this year, right? But I just want to see him more. But are we going to when we've got Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines who demands touches? Nyheim Hines doesn't get used enough. Do we want to run the ball? Do we want to throw it? Do we need 5 wide receivers who can do the business when we've got Jonathan Taylor, who can probably do it mostly all on his own? Maybe not. It'd be nice to have a couple that play at a closer level to Pittman or even higher than we have at the moment. But this has been the way in Indy for 10 years.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you look at the draft. I mean, then will they need to get a wide receiver? Or if Taylor is kind of really the identity, is that something that they really need to focus on in the draft?
Yeah. I say yes. I do take a bit of a dive into the draft class, but I refuse to do it before the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah. Yep.
I've seen people doing mock drafts already, and it winds me up no end. So I don't know the level. I don't really know the level of the college guys. I don't watch college football until after the NFL season's finished, and then I'll spend some time and go and do a deep dive and look at the guys and look at what the Colts really need.
Yeah.
And then I'd like to wait a little bit as well until free agency at least is part of the way gone, so we know we have a general idea of who's going where and whether the Colts are interested in anything there. But yeah, I think in the draft needs is my initial feeling is we have to address wide receiver and cornerback.
Cornerback, yes. Yeah. So let's kind of go to some of the key defensive players in like the, obviously last year the defense I thought was amazing, and in my fantasy drafts I
surprising is probably the word. Surprising. I don't think anyone expects them to play at the level they did.
Well, yeah. When I saw that, I was like, okay, I'm definitely gonna have them in my fantasy league this year. And then I went ahead and did that. And I don't know, has it been injuries, regression, or what has it been this year? And they've turned it around a little bit, haven't they?
Yeah. So again, a big part of the Colts turnaround on the season has been the defense lately being able to stand up in the second half. Mm-hmm. Both units, offense and defense, seem to be unable to play football in the second half of games. We've seen 4 2-score leads disappear into losses this season. Once against the Titans, once against the Ravens, twice against the Texans. The Titans, in fact.
Oh yeah.
And then there was another one somewhere. I forget who it was. So Seahawks, maybe Rams, maybe. We were leading all of these games at one point, and we lost them all. So it's been tough. It's been really tough. I think they're now playing the kind of football that we hoped they would start the season at. I think a big part of that is Matt Eberflus being a little bit soft in coverage second half of the games, just trying to contain when we've got so many guys that can force things to happen that contain isn't the right option. Mm-hmm. Doesn't help that cornerback's been a little bit of a soft spot. Rock Kissing last year was really way too handsy and he's given away DPI way too much. Whereas this season, keeping his hands down and he's allowed something like 3 catches and something like 100 and some snaps on just 11 targets. People do not go near him because he just breaks everything up, which is amazing this season. Obviously, Buckner on the line is just a monster and gets double teamed so much, which opens up people like Teray, Quitty Pay, to put pressure on. Darius Leonard, playing with an injured ankle, has over 100 tackles. He's got like forced fumbles and turnovers like 13, 14 or something this season. I mean, how he's not in the conversation, at least in the conversation for Depoy, is beyond me. Guy's injured and is still outstripping most of his peers, right?
Well, he's not on the Cowboys, that's why.
Yeah, sure. But then you've got Kenny
America's team.
Yeah.
I'll get you going on that.
Yeah, no. Let's not. But Kenny Moore has had a breakout year. Guy's insane. Bobby Okereke, EJ Speed, Isaiah Rogers, Rocky Sin, all guys that are making big steps up in their progression. It's a massive part of where we are, like why we are where we are. Do miss Julian Blackman at safety. Safety's gone a little soft with Blackman being out. The depth isn't quite there. I mean, I'm pretty impressed by George Odom this year. He's had a couple of takeaways, making big stops, big tackles when we really need it. And he stopped Kyler Murray on like a 35, 40-yard scramble in the red zone. I think may have ended up in 3 points rather than 7, which was probably the reason we ended up winning that game. And I'm not a big fan of Sendejo. He's a dangerous player. I mean, he nearly killed 2 Patriots, which normally I wouldn't have a problem with.
Yeah,
like it was really, really like some really harsh, dodgy tackles, and he's not. He's relatively easy to beat in coverage. So,
and he's out this versus the Raiders. I believe he has a concussion. Right?
Yeah, I mean it's the Raiders, isn't it? It's not a problem. We like genuinely when everybody was going out down with COVID and the rule was still 10 days, I was like, we're gonna win anyway. Literally put Sam Ehlinger in there, let him check down and hand it off to Jonathan Taylor. We'll win by 3 scores. It's not a problem. I'm really down on the Raiders. They're just a really, really shitty football team at this stage.
Well, yeah, they've been up and down though. Like, so, I mean, does that worry you like with this team? I mean, because obviously NFL is the NFL. I mean, almost any given Sunday, other than
especially this year. As well.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you can definitely, look at a team and be like, well, we can beat them if we just do this, but you just never know in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get the any given Sunday thing, and people say it to me all the time because I'm a proper homer, especially at the moment. Yeah. But nah, the Raiders ain't. They've had a lot of issues off the field this season, and it's really showing its ugly head on the field. I know they've had a few wins in this stretch, but they're not a good football team.
Well, talking about kind of the Colts, are there some teams then that worry you the playoffs? And I mean, as far as that maybe could exploit some of the weaknesses of the defense?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, we're in a position where we're the 5th seed, so whatever happens, we're away for the haul, and it can be a big difference maker. I mean, I remember beating the Tech a couple of years ago, 2018, I think it was. Andrew Luck still playing at a great level, going to the Texans and absolutely hounding them, and then going to Kansas City and just couldn't live with them. It was a horrible atmosphere. Weather was dreadful. We just couldn't live with them. So it plays a big part. Last year, going to Buffalo, the conditions weren't amazing. They weren't terrible, but they weren't amazing. And maybe we probably cost ourselves that game. The Bills were off it a little bit in that game. And some of the play, I raged at some of the play calling in the first half because we could have gone in ahead had we not gone for it on 4th down and just taken a field goal. But we weren't going to go and win it all anyway, so it don't matter. I got to remember that now. But yeah, I probably don't want to play the Bills.
And they've had such a
victory we had was a bit of a fluke.
Really? Well, they've had such an up and down season. I mean, why was that a fluke? I mean, the Jaguars beat them.
Yeah, no. I think the nature of the victory was more of a fluke. They just had a bad day. That's literally all it was to it. They just had a bad day. They've had a few bad days, but Josh Allen is slowly stepping himself back up. He was great, absolutely. Not just great, like MVP kind of performance against the Pats in second game, right? And if we face that Josh Allen, it's a tough game. I think it'll be. I think whoever we go to, unless it's the Pats, because I just think we're going to hound them. I have to. But if wherever we go across the board, I mean, maybe not Cincy. I got to believe Cincinnati are going to win the AFC North. So maybe not Cincinnati. I feel like we could handle Cincinnati and the Pats. But if it's the Titans, it doesn't matter how banged up they are. It's going to be a tough game. And the Bills, but I want to go to the Titans because I just want to shut them up. But the Bills is the biggest threat, I think. I wouldn't even be that bothered about having to play Kansas, to be honest. I know they're on a bit of a tear and the defense steps it up, but I just got a feeling. I just have a feeling.
Yeah, and when you look at the Colts defense, I mean, what would you say kind of the strength is? I mean, because if the strength is kind of the linebackers and maybe even the up front, and they give a good push, whether it's to Josh Allen or whatever, I mean, the Bills don't necessarily have a very good running game. I mean, that could really right. I mean, that could really be beneficial to the Colts. I mean, If there's a quarterback, I mean, you have quarterbacks that kind of scare you, that can kind of do anything. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, you just trust him implicitly. I mean, Mahomes,
we beat them last year.
Yeah,
it was a great game, but we should have done a better job beating them. We kind of let them stay in it a little bit, and the refs helped massively, obviously.
Oh yeah,
I mean, I think the formula to beating the Bills and beating the Chiefs is more or less the same. Beat up on their O-line and force Josh Allen and Mahomes to beat you. I mean, Mahomes famously, ran for 53 miles behind the line of scrimmage in the Super Bowl. That's still the formula to beating them.
Yep.
They've got their O-line is a little better, and it's coming together. But against a better defensive line, they're still struggling. I mean, Mahomes is pulling tricks and pulling plays out of his arse when we don't expect it, right? But there's still a formula to beating them, and I think you've just got to really hound that offensive line and get at the quarterback. And I think the Colts are one of the teams that could do that. I mean, we saw it against the Bills this season. We've seen it a couple of times this season. We saw them beat up Kyler Murray pretty effectively and Mac Jones pretty effectively recently with depleted units. So. The weakness is getting at the quarterback and forcing turnovers. I mean, that's the major weakness. There's not a player on that defense that isn't capable of turning that ball over. I mean, maybe like the rookie Deo Odeyingbe, not quite at that level. But it's again redshirt. Yeah, you can't really. It's not much of a surprise. There's even depth guys like. Al-Qadim Mohammed can get to quarterbacks and cause issues, and that's what you need.
Well, yeah, and you talked about then last year them, not being able to win it all. I mean, I don't know if that was because the quarterback position. What are you kind of expecting once they get into the playoffs? I mean, if they were to kind of make a run here and get to the AFC Championship game.
I mean, look, if you manage to get yourself to the AFC Championship game, you've got a chance.
Yeah.
If you're that far, it's not luck anymore. It's not strength of schedule. You're winning games there because you're a good team. Bad teams don't get that far. Lucky teams don't get that far. Luck always runs out, right?
No pun intended with Andrew Luck.
Yeah, no, please don't. Please don't. It was in my head as I was saying it, and I was like, don't pick up on it. But there we go. But yeah, no, I think. I don't know. Do I think we'll get to the championship game? No, probably not. I think we've got enough to do to get past the wild card, wherever it is. And like I said, I'm not worried about playing anybody, but I think we'll probably do the same as we did last year. I think we've shown this year that we're very good at beating ourselves, and that seems to be changing at the moment. But I think Frank Reich has always got it in him
I was to say, trusting the Reich, yeah.
I think the combination of Frank Reich's play calling, which last season was at times infuriating, and this year at times has been infuriating, and the combination between him and Wentz, where Wentz just gets dizzy and does silly things. I think that will beat us as much as any opposition will.
In the national media, everyone talks about that being a good marriage between Wentz and Reich. I mean, is that played up? Is that played up too much?
Yeah, I'm a little bit down on it. I'm maybe not down on it, but I'm a little hesitant to jump on that bandwagon.
Yeah, I mean, and when you look at Reich, I mean, and you look at the league, I mean, where does he rank as far as coaches that maybe you would take over him? I mean, I'm a Bears fan, so I know you're not going to take a Nagy over him, right? So there's at least one that you're not going to take over him.
I mean, I think he's right up there. There's only a couple that I might go give him a shot. I think I'm a big fan of Bruce Arians.
And the Bears passed on him. Ugh.
And he did some good work in Indy on a couple of occasions. I think Andy Reid is a bit of a. I don't know whether I'd want to take the risk. I'm not saying he's not a good coach. I think he's a little bit. He might be insane.
Andy Reid?
Yeah, he might be insane. Every time I listen to the guy speak, I just think you are clinically mental.
It's interesting.
He's great. He's a great coach. He's done great work with Kansas. The turnaround was almost instantaneous when he was there. They've not had a losing season since he's been there, and he's done fantastic work with what was, when he took over, a pretty bad roster. Similarly to the likes of Frank Reich and Chris Ballard, I think they've done incredible work since they came in. But I think Reich and Ballard is the right thing for Indy. I don't think you can. I'm so glad Josh McDaniels never happened. Unbelievably glad the snake ended up back in the snake pit. I think I just maybe want somebody else to maybe take play calling duties of Frank Reich sometimes, or just maybe just to have someone there go, Coach, do you think that's the best idea? Maybe just take the field goal this time. Just take the points, because it's how even this season, there are some play calls on just tight end screens on 2 and on 4 and 8. Just what are you doing on our 5-yard line? It ends up in a safety, or because from intentional grounding. It's just, if I'm sat 7,000 miles away, watching it on telly and going, that was stupid, it's probably not the best idea to have taken that, to run that play. Just can't. Some things I just can't understand it. He's a coach and he's doing a great job. Don't get me wrong. I love having him there. I just think maybe we should have a dedicated offensive coordinator who play calls as well.
Yeah, it's interesting with these coaches. I mean, the Bears ran through it with Nagy and giving the play calling up, and I know these coaches have a big job, but also have big egos, and a lot of them don't want to kind of give that up. But some of the better ones, are able to kind of be that CEO type. I mean, you look at Harbaugh, and I'm not sure how down on the Ravens are that you are, as a Colts fan. But
I really hate the Ravens.
But
Harbaugh is a very good coach and very good at what he does in running that scheme.
He is.
It's some people are package guys, right? If you had someone in there interfering, the Ravens probably wouldn't be as good, right? They run a very specialized offense, and you even see it with Hundley as their backup. He's basically Lamar Light, so
right.
He runs really efficiently. You put Wentz in there, it's not going to work. You put anybody, like many other quarterbacks in there, it's not going to work. Whereas I think in Indy, I mean, we had, if you look at Nick Sirianni and the job he's doing in Philadelphia, I really wish we'd held on to him and he was play calling now. But if we win the Super Bowl, I'll shut up.
Well, and it's so interesting. I think whether it's a coach or a quarterback, and how the narrative changes, once a Super Bowl happens. I mean, obviously, you like what Andy Reid's doing. He was in Philadelphia, and he was fired, from Philadelphia, even though with all the winning seasons, and even Mahomes. I mean, you looked at early in the season with the Chiefs struggling, but everyone kind of gave him the benefit of the doubt because he had done it before.
Yeah.
If Wentz goes ahead and, I don't want to say, necessarily wins a Super Bowl, but if he wins a Super Bowl, but even if he gets to a Super Bowl, does that change the narrative around him and then maybe even Frank Reich?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, it probably does, doesn't it? It probably does. Whether it should, maybe not. I think the national coverage and the the NFL media, the opinion of the guys both would probably change. I mean, I think Frank Reich is rightly ranked highly across the board. He only seems to be Colts fans and some of the worst Colts fans that are calling for his head week in, week out because he didn't check down on 2 plays, right? But whatever, like I think he's rated pretty highly, rightly so. I think the Wentz. I don't know. I still can't work him out.
Yeah. Well, I definitely understand that. So like I had a chance. I used to live in Fargo, North Dakota, where NDSU, where he went to college, and so and that's a football factory, but it's and they always put out great players, but it is a small area. You're a big fish in a I mean, Fargo is a big area, but compared to, Philadelphia, where everyone just kind of, is challenging everything, and the NFL quarterback position, they get paid the big bucks to kind of, take that criticism, and probably the biggest thing, with him, as far as how he left Philadelphia and just like getting inside his head, and that's not what you want at the quarterback position.
No. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big benefits for the Colts this season has been, I mean, maybe for Colts fans, and maybe for the general NFL, for the fans is the hard knocks in the season. One of the massive things that, for me, is like I was worried about with Carson Wentz is like things got mad toxic on his exit from that franchise,
Mm-hmm.
and I was worried like there's no smoke without fire, right? Like, there must be something he's not doing or he is doing that's causing this. But I've got to say, watching Hard Knocks, which I can't legally do in the UK, it's literally nowhere. Like I've got to do silly, like naughty things to get hold of those episodes. But to watching it, you've got to say and it's probably a massive reason why one of the massive reasons why the season turned around is that team is a real team, right? Mm-hmm. Like I really hate it when people describe teams as families, but if ever I was going to accept it, it would be now with the Colts. I mean, I'm sure like there are other teams in the league that have that kind of environment, and I sort of scoff a little bit whenever Ballard or Reich are talking about character guys, but God, it's paying off. It really is paying off in Indy.
Well, yeah,
I think Wentz is one of the big guys in there that is making it feel like a family and really, really putting himself out there and doing the things he needs to do to encourage that kind of community in Indianapolis.
Well, yeah, and obviously, everybody wants to win in the NFL right now or yesterday. But it makes a difference to have a coach and just keep developing that program and just have that longevity. I mean, you see that with Pittsburgh. I mean, with Mike Tomlin, I think that's huge. And you have a leader that's going to be there, and people are going to be able to trust.
I really like Tomlin.
Huge. Yeah.
Like Tomlin. I probably would take him in Indy.
That's what I was saying.
Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe not right now. But if he'd have been like one of the guys to potentially come in, I'd have been delighted with that when Reich did. But yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I was saying.
And I hate Pittsburgh with a real burning passion. I really hate that football team. Yeah, no, I love Tomlin. He's class.
That's why, like, presumably the Bears are going to lose their coach, and that would be, someone that would be my dream scenario, that he's, ready to move on, and then would go ahead and just, bring that stability, because that's important.
I mean, he's been there a hell of a time, like itchy feet, hopefully. I'd love to see that whole franchise crash and burn into that.
Hey, I totally get that, but and you look at going back to the Colts as well. I mean, having Frank Reich, but then also the ownership, and obviously he's gone through his ups and downs.
Yeah.
But I mean, from what all you look, he's a good guy, giving guy. I believe he gave his plane to like a kid or someone that had cancer, flew him to a game or something, and so he's doing those things.
Yeah, Jim Assay. I mean, he's a good job. He's not his dad, but yeah, he's had his demons. He's had issues with mental health and stuff, and that's a big thing with Indy. And they've got that whole tackling the stigma thing that they really push over there. But it really pays off having a. I mean, I was going to say an owner that isn't clinically insane, but I'm not sure he isn't. But I think it's like good. I think it weighs into being a good thing, and just I follow him on Twitter, and the guy's always giving to charity and doing stuff for charity and giving stuff away, and doing what he can just to help the community, help Indianapolis as a city, and it's. You see some of the other guys like Kraft, who is just a giant shitbag, and it's amazing. I think the combination of him, Ballard, and Reich it's just a beautiful setup, and it's so unbelievably different to having Grigson and Pagano. Like I like Pagano, maybe not as a head coach, maybe as like a defensive guy. Like you obviously Bears have experienced it. But like he's a great guy. Grigson wasn't, but Pagano was great. But like just the whole like community and environment and that's going on in India at the moment, it's a real good time. It's a great time to be a Colts fan, which for a few years, 3 or 4 years ago, it really wasn't.
Yeah, and you look at it. I mean, obviously, it was good to see them in the playoffs, last year, and there is a lot of promise. I'm sure the biggest thing is just making sure you have the quarterback, Wentz, and kind of just can perform at a high level when it matters. But really, there is a lot of promise overall. I'd say with the Colts.
Yeah, I think the major bonus of having someone like Ballard is he'd like to win now, but win now isn't his focus. He's setting things up so that we can be there or thereabouts for years, rather than the Rams probably have thrown all of their eggs into this year's basket, whereas that might not be a good idea.
Right.
They've spent a hell of a lot of money. They've spent a hell of a lot of future draft investment on getting things done and getting things done now, like bringing in Von Miller, bringing in OBJ, bringing in Matthew Stafford, who I really wanted in Indy. My God, I really wanted him in Indy. That was my guy. And when I saw that trade, I was furious, like properly furious.
But you're glad now, though, right? Because I mean,
I'd still rather have him.
You take him over Wentz? Oh,
yeah. Like I think,
really?
I think the Colts offensive line is better than the Rams offensive line is.
Yeah.
He'd have Jonathan Taylor as opposed to an injured Cam Akers or Darrell Henderson.
That's interesting. I'd
like to feel that he would elevate some of the wide receiving core, like he clearly has done in LA this year. Like Cup and Trees have been great, but that's not all on them. Like they've got a much better quarterback throwing to them, who's capable of finding them in wide open spaces down the field. Like Matthew Stafford is a big part of why they've performed so well.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna you've kind of inspired me. I'm going to once we get off here, I'm gonna put a poll. Who would take Stafford, if we would take Stafford or Wentz? That's an interesting.
Drop me in it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm absolutely happy for you to say that I would take I would still take Stafford over Wentz. I'm satisfied with Wentz, but I would take Stafford right now.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Well, this has been amazing. I definitely appreciate you, taking your time coming on. Sure. And so where can everyone find you again?
So, I mean, if you want to come and listen to some British idiots talk about football, then you can find us more or less on anywhere that does podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Google, Breaker, and a load I've never even heard of. On Twitter, you can find us at Tough Show Official. You can find me at NEYT88_ to just make it easy. We've got a Discord community where we've got some people that talk a lot about football. So if you want to come and join that, you can find details of that anywhere you can find us. We're on YouTube as well. We do prediction show on YouTube. Again, it's just the Un-American football show.
Awesome. Love it. So thanks again. And once again, this has been an NFL Outdated Cover 2 series on the Indianapolis Colts. And, obviously go Colts, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And feel free to, edit this out or whatever, but fuck the Titans.
I'm leaving that one in. So
no, it's got to be done.
Thanks again. And we'll catch you later.
Yeah, thank you.